Willie, we will start with President Biden's big speech yesterday.
Yeah, the president trying to kind of reinvigorate those stalled talks over voting rights. He was speaking from Philadelphia yesterday. In forceful terms, the president blasting those who've been pushing the big lie while condemning statewide efforts to restrict voting.
In America, if you lose, you accept the results. You follow the Constitution. You try again. You don't call facts fake and then try to bring down the American experiment just because you're unhappy. That's not statesmanship. That's not statesmanship. That's selfishness. No other election has ever been held under such scrutiny and such high standards. The big lie is just that, a big lie. The denial of full and free and fair elections is the most un-American thing that any of us can imagine, the most undemocratic, the most unpatriotic, and sadly, not unprecedented. Time and again, we've weathered threats to the right to vote in free and fair elections, and each time we found a way to overcome. The 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting, and we're going to challenge it vigorously. It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote, who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. The Confederates, back then, never breached the Capitol, as insurrectionists did on January the 6th. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying this because you should be alarmed. We'll be asking my Republican friends in Congress and states and cities and counties to stand up for God's sake and help prevent this concerted effort to undermine our election and the sacred right to vote. Have you no shame?
17 states have enacted new voting laws since the 2020 election. Texas could become the 18th. We'll have more on the fight in that state coming up in just a moment. Let's bring in White House reporter for the Associated Press, Jonathan Lemire, and White House correspondent for Politico and co-author of the playbook, Eugene Daniels. Gentlemen, good morning to you both. Jonathan, let me start with you. So this was a lot of passion from the president yesterday. The question is, to what end? We know that both of those bills are kind of languishing in Congress, both of the federal voting bills. What did he hope to do yesterday?
Willie, I was there with him in Philadelphia when he delivered that speech, a really forceful speech, probably his most forceful yet, denouncing these Republican states and their efforts to restrict access to the ballot. It was a good speech and powerfully delivered in front of a crowd, which this president hasn't seen much of because of the pandemic. And he really did, as was outlined in those video clips, really wanted to sort of illuminate the American people just what's going on here, what a challenge this is to American democracy, that even after you cast your ballot, and your right to do so may be limited, but even after it's cast, it may not be properly counted by state legislators that may not want to certify the election results if their candidate lost. It was full of warnings from President Biden, and he took head on the big lie. Though he never mentioned Donald Trump's by name, he squarely addressed this idea, this election fraud, these claims that are so baseless but have fueled all of these states trying to change how elections are conducted in their state. But here's the catch. The other word he didn't mention yesterday was filibuster.
Right.
Not once during the speech. And it seems unlikely that there's any path to federal legislation without some sort of either the removal of the filibuster or at least an alteration to the filibuster. And aides are saying that they are waiting on this, that they want to have a series of these speeches first, more to sort of use the bully pulpit on the issue, and then once the H.R. 4 is drafted, then make a more nuanced case and make a decision as to what to do with the filibuster. And I'll note, Willie, as a final point, in the audience yesterday was our friend, Reverend Al Sharpton, who spoke to the president in the moments after the speech. I then spoke to the Reverend, who said that he confronted Biden and said, look, that was a great speech, but what about the filibuster? And Biden told him, we haven't decided our position about that yet. And until they do, Willie, it's hard to see how there would be any meaningful legislation to protect voting rights.
Yeah, that's why the frustration is there that Democrats aren't going to be able to get this across without a eliminating the filibuster. Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, others have shown no willingness to get rid of that. So, Eugene Daniels, if you take a step back and you look at the big picture, it is extraordinary to stop and think that a sitting president of the United States had to announce and say out loud all the things that President Biden said yesterday, which is, do not undermine our democracy. Do not call the results of election into question when it's clear who won. But he has to do it now because of what exactly is happening, not just at the federal level with Donald Trump, but it's state by state, including in the state of Texas, where, as the president said yesterday, a lot of this is coming on the back end. Who gets to count the votes once they're in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things that I'm sure a lot of people didn't expect, right? When you think about who would try to undermine an American election, you typically don't think about a former president. You typically don't think about sitting lawmakers and people around the country who have power to change laws. And I think that is one of the things that the president, people in the White House have been wanting to push for months, right? To be very clear. I think the president was as clear as he has been about what happened here, knocking down all of those people without saying Donald Trump's name, like you said. But exactly what Jonathan said is that there is almost no movement, right? So I talked to some of the activists who work on this issue, and they say, well, yeah, this is great. We wanted the president to do this speech and do more speeches. They want to see him go on the road and basically sell democracy like he sold the infrastructure plans that he's been running through and that are going to go through Congress here pretty soon. And I think that is what they're hoping to see. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing, is that President Biden is going to take this on the road and fight for, as one aide put it to me, fight for democracy and make it very clear that it doesn't matter who you are in this country. You don't get to pick the winner unless you're the voters, right? You don't get to, after you lose, decide who is in charge here.